Hi Stampers, this is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs. Today I'm going to show you how to take the pineapple stamped image and create a 3D-ish looking pineapple. What I've done here is taken an X-Acto knife and cut into the crown of the pineapple and also into the body. I've cut those with an X-Acto knife and I'm going to show you how to do that today. So let's get started with a list of supplies you need. For cardstock, we're using Emerald Envy 4.5 by 11, scored at 5.5 and folded. Whisper White 5.5 by 4.25. Daffodil Delight 5.25 by 4. And this next piece does not have to be exact. Mine is about 2 inches by 1.5. It's just a scrap piece that actually is going to sit behind so that the green peeks through. So that's just a scrap piece of the Emerald Envy. We need a scrap piece of Daffodil Delight to cut out some flowers. And another scrap piece of Emerald Envy to stamp the sentiment on. For stamp sets, we're using the pineapple image, which is quite a large stamp, but that's going to be the bulk of our stamping today. And we are also using thoughtful banners. We're using this right here, along with the hello, as you can see on the card. That's where my sentiment comes from. And I want to say sorry in advance if my voice sounds a little stressed out. I just had some customers over and we did a lot of talking, so I'm struggling with my voice a little bit. For punches, we need the Blossom Builder punch and the Classic Label punch, which is a new one in our annual catalog, and it's kind of neat. We need the Stampin' Embossed Buddy. For inks, we're using Whisper White and VersaMark. Also going to need an X-Acto knife, the Daffodil Delight Stampin' Right marker, and the Emerald Envy Stampin' Right marker, a bone folder, scissors, stamping dimensionals, and the copper embossing powder along with the heat tool. So let me move all of this aside and we'll get started on today's project. We're going to start out with the Whisper White layer, and this layer is actually going to be cut down. Because the pineapple image is so large, it's hard to center it exactly the way you want it. As you can see, I cut right on the tip of each end to fit on this sheet. So once I have this all cut and embossed, I'm going to trim it down to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I also wanted to mention that it's quite funny. I went to have my nails done this week, and a lot of you guys send me emails about my nails. So look what I had done this week. They're pineapples. Isn't that neat? So I thought it would go good with today's theme, and I actually used the same colors to coordinate. So we're going to bring in the large pineapple stamp and the VersaMark ink. And before I ink that, I'm also going to use my Embossing Buddy and just pounce on my cardstock and then spread it. This alleviates any static, so some of the embossing powder won't go where it's not needed. And because this is such a large stamp, I am going to ink it upside down to make sure I ink it all correctly. So I'm just going to pounce with my VersaMark ink. And then we're going to stamp it on our cardstock piece. I'm going to sit on it for about 30 seconds or so. And as you can see, I did go down a little lower here, but that's okay. It's still going to work. We'll bring in the copper embossing powder. And I keep all of my embossing powders in containers. It's so much easier and less of a mess. to deal with because everything falls back in. So I have now added the embossing powder. I'm going to go heat this with my heat tool and I'll be right back. My embossing layer is all heated through and look how shiny that is. Such a pretty color. So now I'm going to bring in a mat for my cutting. Before I cut, I'm going to bring in the Stampin' Right markers and I'm going to use the brush tip and I'm actually going to color where the white cardstock still peeks through. Just adds color. You might not be able to see it well on the video, but it does fill in the white space pretty good. So all I'm doing is tracing on those lines. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the green, the Emerald Envy. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but I did add yellow in there, the Daffodil Delight. Same thing with the green, the Emerald Envy. We'll use the brush tip. And no, this is not going to stay like this. As you can see, the lines are getting thicker. I'm going to wipe that off with a tissue when I'm done. Okay, so there's the green. And I'm going to bring in a paper towel or tissue and just wipe off the excess. And if you're doing this, try not to go outside of the white because you might end up spreading some of that marker color. Okay, and there's the green. Now I'm going to bring in the X-Acto knife. And for those of you that have never used one of these, please be careful. They do cut pretty sharply. So as you see on my card, when you lift these up, you can see the green peeking underneath, and the ones over here, you can see the Daffodil Delight peeking underneath. So I'm going to cut on the lines that I just colored. Just make sure you don't slip like I almost just did. So on this one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the leaves from the crown to cut. Whoops. And I'm going to flip it upside down just to finish. Some of them didn't cut all the way through. And just make sure they pop out after you cut them. Sometimes it's just where they meet in the corner that needs to be cut a little bit more. So this is the last one on this part of it. And if you just lift up on them, that's where your color is going to show through. So there, I've got all 5 of these popped out. Now we're going to go into the pineapple itself. And I just kind of randomly picked some of these here and there. I'm going to try to do the same ones that I did on the first one. So there's 2. Okay, I've done 3 just to show you, and I'm going to keep going, and I'll come back with them all finished up so you don't have to sit there and watch me. So I'm back with all of my cut pieces that I wanted to flip upwards, as you can see. It's kind of neat. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to bring in the scrap piece of Emerald Envy. And I'm also going to bring in my stamping dimensionals, and I want to cut just little pieces on the end here. And the reason I'm doing that, I wanted these leaves to stay up a little bit all by themselves. So I added stamping dimensionals, I don't know if you can see them, underneath here, so that when I glue this in place, they're going to remain popped a little bit so they don't lay flat. Okay, there's 3, and I need 2 more. And trim this one a little bit more because I think it's going to show through. And there's my last one. Now what I'm going to do is remove the backing. And you'll see more what I mean once we have this on there. Okay, now we're just going to press this in place to cover where the leaves are going to show through. So now when I lift this up, you can see all of the green behind it. Okay. So now let's get the flowers ready, and I'm just going to use the small flower from the blossom bunch. I'm going to cut 2 of those. And I'm also going to stamp for my sentiment. So I'm going to do the outline first. And this is with the white craft ink, and I'm going to want to let this dry a little bit before I'm using it. That's why I'm doing it now. Okay, so we have the hello and the frame outline. Now I'm going to bring in the punch to cut that out. Okay, so we have that. For the flowers, I'm going to glue them together. And I'm just going to alternate the petals. And I did forget to mention in the supply list that we are also going to be using the enamel shapes. This is from the In Colors, and we're using the little dot. So now that this is dry, I'm going to fold just the top layer of petals towards the center. That gives it a 3D look. And then I'm going to pull off one of the enamel dots and press it in place. So now the flower's all set. So we got the flower and the sentiment. All we have left now to do is to cut this piece down and then glue our layers together. So I'm going to cut the white so it measures 5 inches long by 3 3/4. So 5 by 3 3/4. So now we can glue the flower in place. And for the sentiment, I am again going to use the skinny portion of the Stamping Dimensionals. This is a perfect width to fit in there. And we're going to glue that in place. Not upside down. And now let's bring in the other 2 layers. So the Daffodil Delight is going to go over the Emerald Envy. And then the Whisper White will be your top layer. So now you can just kind of lift on these and push these upwards, and now you can see the Daffodil Delight peeking through. And then fix the petals on the flower, and there you go. There's your 3D pineapple, and there's the first card that I made. So the embossing really adds a lot to this card. I really like how the copper looks, very shiny. And this is another one of those cards that can be easily mass produced if you need more than one. I will list all the supplies I used today at the end of my video, along with a link to my online store. Thanks so much for stopping in.